Hey, the new BetParx app, everything you want in a digital casino and sportsbook. It's the only casino and sportsbook app that I recommend. BetParx app, which I have right on my phone, has you covered for football season and what a year it will be. TC, on my phone with the BetParx casino app, I can bet right now on how many games the Eagles will win. I can bet on whether who'll have the most passing yards, rushing yards,
love stuff like
futures.
That.
It's futures.
In games betting. That's so fun.
That too.
Yeah.
Why don't you follow at BetParx on Twitter for game lines, odds boost, and more? Live in-game betting, BetParx has you covered. You can bet on the action, as TC says, as it happens. Join me right now on the all-new BetParx Casino and Sportsbook app. Bet on your favorite sports and play all your favorite casino games for real money. But it begins with you downloading at the App Store, the App Store, BetParx.com. Got to be 21 and in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Time now for the headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. Yesterday, thank you for the 9,235 votes cast on the poll question of the day. Does the fact that Ayman al-Zawahiri was killed in Kabul vindicate or vilify Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan? I said yesterday that I wish I'd come up with a better alliteration in terms of your two choices. Validate would have been better than vindicate. Vilify, I was really trying to say, does this confirm that you can fight terrorism with an over-the-horizon strategy? You don't have to have boots on the ground. You can use a drone and kill the number 2 in Al-Qaeda. Or because he was in Kabul, in a densely populated area, does that mean, wow, we really do need to have boots on the ground because the Taliban can't be trusted because surely they must have given safe harbor to Ayman al-Zawahiri? 75%, 75.46% of you said it vindicates. 24.54% said that it actually vilifies. I said yesterday that I wanted to see the day 2 coverage of the takeout of Zawahiri, and that statement was kind of confirmed today in the press, kind of confirmed with the follow-up coverage to Zawahiri. So, yeah. And you were supposed to say, and what did you learn? Like, oh my God, come on. What the hell are you doing over there?
What? Honestly, this is how we start the YouTube. This is what we're doing. Are you kidding me? What is wrong with you?
Did we not have this conversation?
Wow.
Yes or no?
Crazy. I don't recall.
Anyway, here's what do you want to try again?
Sure.
I always said that the second day coverage.
Someone just wrote on YouTube, She's busy putting on her lipstick.
Yeah, she is. Look at it. Jesus. Let's try this again.
Okay.
Take 2.
All right.
I always said that the second day of coverage would be the most revealing about the takeout of Ayman al-Zawahiri.
You did say that yesterday. What did we learn today?
Not as much as I thought we would have learned.
There you go.
Well, actually, here's what I learned. I learned that
you're setting me up.
I learned that if you're like a really bad guy, mix up your routine. Mix up your routine because I'm trying to think of.
Don't be the pacer and don't go out on the balcony.
That's exactly what it is. So he had a habit. Here it is. Analysts eventually, the Times has good coverage. Julian Barnes and Eric Schmidt. Analysts eventually identified a figure who lingered on the balcony reading, but never left the house, and they figured it was Zawahiri. I mean, his family was living there too. There's a big tell.
Right.
And apparently, as soon as the Americans left Kabul, the Zawahiri family, moved in, on Maple Street or something.
Crazy.
Yeah. So how exactly they got a break, I don't know. The coverage does talk, as I talked yesterday, about Joby Warrick having written that book, The Triple Agent, how we lost 7 CIA personnel a couple of years ago, December 30, 2009. This was at Camp Chapman. They thought they had a line on Zawahiri, and it was a guy who was a triple agent wearing an explosive vest who killed a lot of Americans. Horrible, horrible day. The CIA always carried that forward and wanted to settle this score. The Associated Press also has interesting detail on the Hellfire missile that was used and fired by a drone. It was designed as an anti-tank missile in the 1980s. I'm also reminded here of the drone strike when we were leaving Afghanistan that took out that entire family, 10 civilians and a lot of kids. This version, much more precise in the way that it was used. It does not carry an explosive payload. Instead, it has a series of 6 rotating blades that emerge on its final approach to a target.
That's so grisly,
isn't it?
I mean, that's in other words, it
F him. He deserved it.
Okay, I get the whole thing. I understand, but I'm just thinking of what the scene looked like. So, in other words, it hits him, and as it hits him, it just like a wood chipper.
Yeah, like one of those things that you see the Asplin trucks and they're throwing.
That's what I was picturing. Okay,
I want to know if this is grisly. I want to know if he saw it coming. I want to know, like, was there a split second at the end?
Has to be yes.
I hope so.
Has to be yes. You know why? Think about just the drones, the little drones that fly around, and when you can hear it or see it.
Yeah,
like it has to.
Oh yeah, for sure. So maybe it'll be the day 3 coverage that'll tell me even more. I'd love to know.
I'll ask you about the day 3 coverage tomorrow.
I hope you'll be on top of your game more than you are today. I'd like to know. We'll never know, but I'd love to know, like, who fired it.
We won't know that.
And from where. Peter Bergen has good coverage from CNN today, posted at Smerconish.com, his wrap-up. He was an excellent guest here yesterday. He said, maybe it was at the Creech Air Force Base in Qatar, Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, or at the base in Qatar. But, the chances are it's someone with gaming expertise sitting in front of a console, looking at a monitor who threw that switch.
You keep saying gaming expertise, but do you really mean that? In other words, it's obviously someone who's very good at computers, but it's a soldier. It's not like a gamer.
I'm not minimizing it. I'm praising them. I would like to heap credit upon them.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's also somebody who played, War of Witchcraft or whatever the game's on.
All right, you're out of here. Moving on.
I'm from the Pong and Pac-Man era.
Frogger.
Did you see the thumbnail for the YouTube video today? We're not in Kansas anymore. The biggest election story of last night was not any particular candidate's victory. It's not whether Trump or Pence, one of their candidates, won in Arizona. Trump, by the way. Eric won in Missouri, and it wasn't Greitens. He got hammered. By the way, he got hammered. Rusty Bowers is the Arizona State House Speaker. I interviewed him recently on CNN. He's the guy, I should say, he's one of the many people that Trump cajoled in the 2020 aftermath, and Rusty Bowers wouldn't break. And then I asked Rusty Bowers if he could ever be for Trump again, and he suggested that he wouldn't, but then he was very definitive this past weekend in saying that he never would. Well, guess what? The Arizona State House Speaker lost his primary, which tells you about primary voters, and it ought to make Liz Cheney nervous, although John Dutton is now for her. But the big story is that the referendum in Kansas on abortion was the first time that voters have gotten any say since the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It was significant because this is a very red state with a very blue result, a 20-point margin, and not a margin that suggests only Democrats came out and took a pro-choice stance on the referendum. It suggests that some Republicans and independents did likewise. And what I'm positive of in the aftermath of Kansas is that now the pundit class, of which I'm a proud member, is going to have to temper its comments about the midterms, because now it'll be, well, we anticipate this is going to be a very big year for Republicans taking over the House, maybe the Senate, maybe not, because after all, inflation is high, Biden's numbers are low, the borders are porous, crime seems rampant. The whole laundry list of talking points for Republicans. But now it'll be, but look at what happened in Kansas. And if Kansas can come out and have a pro-choice result in a very red state, then maybe abortion as a motivating factor is not just a conservatives issue. Maybe people really are upset. Hey, it's August. Like in an August primary, just think about this. In an August primary in a red state, and I get it, they elect Democratic governors as well in Kansas. I understand the dynamics, but nevertheless, it's basically a red state with a very pro-life heritage, a lot of pro-life activity in that state. And yet people turned out in the thick of summer from a pro-choice perspective. So does this mean that the potency of abortion is going to carry Democrats in the midterm? That's what I'm getting to with today's survey question at Smerconish.com. How did I word it? Is the Kansas abortion vote a sign of the national potency of this issue for Democrats in the midterms?
Are you going to explain your John Dutton reference that you just slid
Nope.
in there right before Kansas?
No, I am not.
Not going to say anything else about it.
Yeah.
Maybe just go to
Smerconish.com.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Come on, don't we all? You watch, right?
I don't.
You don't?
No, not yet, but now I have to.
Oh. It's kind of funny because yesterday we had lunch with Judy Mark.
That was so fun.
A lot of stories, a lot of laughs,
Wonderful.
and a lot of remembrances of Sid. And the two of you were like going on and on about Game of Thrones.
You need to watch Game of Thrones.
I watched some Game of Thrones. I never got into it. But you said, here's the point. You said, I need to take another look at Game of Thrones. And I would say to you, you need to take a look at Yellowstone.
I will.
Because I think it's really terrific.
I 100% will, but I have to finish Peaky Blinders first.
Yeah, not sure if I'm going to go back to Peaky Blinders.
So good. It's very much like The Godfather.
Have you watched The Godfather?
I had to.
The Godfather, I don't have to use subtitles to watch The Godfather.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Even when they're speaking Italian. So I recommend something else. When you get beyond the Kansas abortion vote, reading in the political news of the day, and I've got good coverage from Missouri. I've got good coverage from Arizona. I've got good coverage from Kansas. It's all there in Smerconish.com, the newsletter today. But there are other things that I would recommend for you, including the lead editorial of the Wall Street Journal. You caught my attention, Wall Street Journal, with a headline that says, IRS is about to go beast mode. Progressives want Joe Biden to unleash what they call beast mode executive power, and the Schumer Manchin tax bill supplies the cash to turn the Internal Revenue Service into a Wolverine. The pact between Manchin and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer includes $80 billion in new funding for the tax man. Democrats claim this investment will yield more than $200 billion in revenue. The $80 billion is more than 6 times the current IRS budget. What? The $80 billion is more than 6 times the current annual IRS budget. The money will be ladled out over 9 years, comes with a few strings attached. The main Democratic command is for the tax agency to bring the hammer down on taxpayers. The bill earmarks $45.6 billion for enforcement, including litigation, criminal investigations, investigative technology, digital asset monitoring, and a new fleet of tax collector cars. So get ready for more audits, civil suits, and criminal referrals. The IRS. Speaker Pelosi has now left Taiwan, right?
She has.
She's gone.
As of, I think, this morning.
So the most interesting part of her trip for me, I'm glad she's safe and she's left, and the Chinese are rattling their sabers and they have, ships encircling Taiwan, but no one has done anything stupid so far. Typically, says a story from The Guardian, a plane crash is big news, whereas a plane taking off or landing is not news at all. The sight on Tuesday of Nancy Pelosi's U.S. military aircraft touching down in Taiwan was certainly news and cause for a collective sigh of relief. It was the most tracked, the kid who tracks Elon Musk's plane?
Elon Jet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there was more tracking of her flight than any other flight that has been tracked. Such was the curiosity level about Nancy Pelosi's flight.
I was surprised when she landed when we were on the air yesterday. So it was live and all three had the footage. Right. And there were people running to follow the motorcade or to see, and I thought, sort of celebrity-like, which surprised me. Maybe it shouldn't have surprised me.
Big deal for the Taiwanese.
Yeah.
So something else that I want to recommend from Smerconish.com today, you can read the Mediaite story. I read the underlying study. The headline from Mediaite, cable news more polarized today than 10 years ago. Bias accelerated after Trump election. And the lead of Mediaite says this, cable news is more polarized today than in the last 10 years. A new study out of the University of Pennsylvania has found this measure of polarization, researchers noted, was accelerated after the election of Donald Trump. In the freshly published study titled Measuring Dynamic Media Bias, which was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Doesn't that all sound official?
This is like the New England Journal of Medicine, practically.
Networks like Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN were analyzed and rated on a bias scale using their guests as a measurement. Here's what they did. Let's just cut to the chase. They looked at who were the guests. You by the way, when you go into the study, there is a Stanford database that has tracked for at least the last 10 years all appearances on all the cable channels, and I'm able to put my name in and like see this bar graph of how often I've been on, which is kind of wild. So what they did was,
can you track your own show? No, you track your own self.
I can track my own self,
okay.
But I believe I can track my own show. I didn't play along with it for all that long.
Oh, I'll go check it out.
I just wanted to understand. How did they do this?
Okay.
How did they quantitatively measure bias in the media? And I'm not sure this is the best barometer, but
where do you count if you're a pundit?
I'm also not sure that I have a better one.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's what they did. They looked at the guests and they looked at the political donations of the guests.
Oh.
And they drew conclusions based on the amount of face time that particular programs were giving to individuals who had donated to Republicans or Democrats.
Hey, money talks.
Now, maybe that's an overly simplistic perspective on it, but they found that CNN had moved further to the left than MSNBC over the years based on their research measurements. That they started out with Fox on the right and MSNBC on the left and CNN somewhere in between, and that CNN, according to their metrics, had significantly moved closer to MSNBC. Wow. Another media story that's worthy of attention today, speaking of a polarized media, speaking of a guy who is just the prototype of everything that's gone wrong with a polarized media, Alex Jones, on trial, parents from Sandy Hook having their day in court and trying to have damages assessed against him as a denier. Do you know that as this trial is going on, he still has an open mic and is saying horrific things?
And so he says one thing in the courtroom and then he goes and says something else on the air. How is that even possible?
Reminiscent of
That's crazy.
Reminiscent of when he was in the child custody battle in Austin, Texas, and his wife tried to introduce things that he says on radio or on television, and his lawyer said, "Oh, he's a performance artist. You can't hold him accountable for that."
Wait a minute. Does this actually feed into his defense? Because if he changed the way he was on radio while the trial was underway, then it would be an admission that what he did prior was wrong.
That's really a great observation by you, but this is all about money damages. There's really not an opportunity to defend on the underlying facts at this stage. This is a damages process.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so he is a crumb. He is the worst of those who have opportunity to have the privilege of a microphone in front of them. Let me end with the best. Vin Scully, the legendary Dodgers broadcaster, is gone at age 94. Do you know that he called Dodger games, think about this, for 67 years? 67 years. The best that there ever was, said pitcher Clayton Kershaw after the Dodgers game in San Francisco. Here's just a 10-second clip from the late, great Vin Scully.
1 ball and no strikes. Aaron waiting. The outfield deep and straight away. Fastball is a high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone.
Hank Aaron. He began in the 1950s era of Pee Wee Reese and Jackie Robinson, onto the 60s with Don Drysdale and Sandy Koufax, into the 70s with Steve Garvey and Don Sutton, through the 80s with Horrell Hershiser and Fernando Valenzuela. Into the 90s, it was Mike Piazza and Hideo Nomo, followed by Kershaw, Manny Ramirez, and Yasiel Puig in the 21st century. Vin Scully, class act. Every time I watched him on television, never had the privilege of making his acquaintance, but he's someone who ought to be more representative of the industry than that other guy. Go vote at Smerconish.com on today's survey question. This Kansas abortion vote, is it a sign of the national potency of this issue? Come November, is this going to be a saving grace for Democrats trying to hold on to the House of Representatives as well as the United States Senate 50-50 +1? Or do you think it's a one-off? That's what I'm asking at Smerconish.com in today's survey question. Thank you for listening on POTUS. Thank you for watching Thank you for watching on my YouTube channel and for reading Smerconish.com, the daily newsletter.